Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's Tuesdays with Terica. As promised, I have a special guest with me today, Dwight Bailey, who is a renowned musician. He's going to share his story. Stay tuned. It's going to be an absolute pleasure. So we are actually interviewing with Dwight Bailey from Columbus, Ohio, but now you are in a new location. Where
Yeah.
are you now? Where are you now?
Las Vegas, Nevada.
Las Vegas, the land of the musicians. How about that?
Oh, yeah, there are plenty of them here.
Well, but I think it's great that you are able to be in the place where you can breathe more life. Not that you need it, but that you can breathe more life because you're actually centered around people that you can glean from who are doing like things, makes
Hmm.
it nice.
Yeah, absolutely. In Central Ohio, there's so many phenomenal musicians and artists in their own right. This is just an extension of what I was already in me from childhood. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's a wonderful opportunity. I'm looking forward to it. And it's different when you live in a place as opposed to just traveling or touring or performing in a certain location. It makes it a little bit more interesting. Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this since you said this or made a statement, kind of something popped in my mind. Now that you are in a different location, which we're both from Columbus, we love the support that they've been able to give you. But do you feel a little more appreciated in a new spot? Or have you been there long enough to feel acclimated to even know the answer to that?
That's a very good question. I don't know if I feel appreciated yet. I feel to a degree like I almost have to start from scratch from the beginning, all over, so
Really?
to speak. Yeah, because people know you, but they don't really know you. And maybe even if they've seen you, working with different artists, that's a whole different thing as opposed to being a part of a system that already generates where people are doing certain styles of music, whether
Mhm.
it's on the strip, whether it's off the strip, whether it's some kind of show or something. Even the involvement with the musician union, I'm noticing that everybody is kind of like, okay, this is a new guy,
Mhm.
but he's going to have to prove himself. Now that's something that I wasn't really prepared to do. So yeah.
And I can only imagine because you have such a extensive resume. So give me 1 second because I want to read it, okay?
Oh boy.
For those of you who are just getting to know Dwight Bailey, let me give you a little summary of his resume. Dedicated and outgoing, professional musician for over 35 years of experience as an instrumentalist, instructor, facilitator, clinician, community leader, musical director, program director, author, composer, businessman, and team leader. Performed and toured with numerous local, regional, and international musical artists. That's a lot. Cause okay, so I'm a woman of a certain age, but you're still a young man.
Well, to a degree. Yeah, I'm young at heart, and I feel like this. Music is one of those things that it energizes you from the inside out.
Absolutely.
It's just like whatever spirit you're dealing with, it can either energize you or it can pull you back and cause you to feel old and tired or whatever. But I feel very energized, and that is one thing that I will say about the Las Vegas area is there is a certain energy. I've been reminded of why I enjoyed playing music in the first place,
Wow.
why it attracted me in the first place, what made me start. And playing with some of the musicians here have kind of triggered and stirred up, as you say, stirring up that gift, so to speak.
Mhm,
That
mhm.
has happened definitely. Yeah.
Well, okay, so when did you know, 'cause see, I know because you were upstairs and I was downstairs. So I know a little bit about when you started, but for our viewers, when did you actually start with your gift, and what was your first musical instrument that you wanted to try?
Well, my first musical instrument was the drums. I started on the drums, and my mother went to a music store and bought me a snare drum so that I could play in the elementary. I think it wasn't a marching band; it was a stage band or something like that. And
Mhm.
I was the only kid that had a bright blue uh, snare drum case. And I told her, I said, I'm not playing that. I'm not taking that to school. She said, you're going to take that drum to school. So I went and I played it. But that was my very first instrument. And of course, Scott Arnold, Wesley Dunlap, all of my buddies that were playing drums, they were way better than I was. So it was an inspiration to watch them play and then to try to learn what I could learn. So it was exciting. That was my first instrument.
So you were in elementary school. I want to give honor to your mom because she made a sacrifice, and then you had the nerve to say you wasn't going to play the doggone drum because of the color.
Well, yeah, she made many sacrifices
Yes.
uh,
Yes.
to to make sure that I was engaged,
Hmm.
to keep me busy. As you know, as a youngster, I was quite active and quite involved in a lot of things.
What
So
he means is he got in trouble.
well, I wasn't going to say that, but thank you very much. And then I had people that would tell when I did things. So,
Always the jokester, always, always. Always a good time. But I'm so grateful um that your mom, like many moms, many parents, many caregivers that are raising children that maybe they didn't birth, took the time to find something that she knew you could be or you were interested in and wanted to help you build onto that.
right, yeah. And with the drum, that was the initial instrument. But after a while, I bugged her a little more about getting a guitar.
Mhm.
And she bought a guitar from a lady that went to our church, a lady named Sister McNeil. Her son had a guitar. And mom bought, I think I was maybe 11 or 12 years old when she purchased that guitar. And we noticed that two of the strings were broke or were actually kind of busted off the guitar. So it played, the tuning of it was the layout of a bass guitar, which of course your lower four strings were still on the guitar. So I actually started playing bass lines on the guitar, and I was probably about 11 or 12 years old. But I remember um, practicing, and she said, "Well, you're not playing it right." I said, "Well, I hear something else." But what I was hearing was the instrument that I ultimately have learned to play now is the bass guitar. And I remember I would practice and practice and practice. And my dad at the time, my dad worked nights and he would sleep during the day. And I remember I would practice. And my mom would say, you have to stop. You have to stop practicing when your dad gets home because he needs to rest. And what I found, I talk about this in the book later, which we'll get to that. But I talk about this when my dad told my mother, "Oh no, let him practice. He won't. It won't bother me." To me, that was him co-signing that it was okay for me to expand in that area, and they both just let me go.
And boy, do I know it, because
Yeah,
all I can remember is boom, boom, boom.
yeah, yes,
I,
absolutely.
but as a child, I didn't know that was the sound of a bass. And actually, as I got older, I realized that the bass has a very foundational part for the rest of the music to build off of. But
Exactly.
all I could hear was the boom, 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 boom. And me and one of your sisters, because Antoinette was so young,
Uh-huh.
seemingly to be so young as we were teenagers, But you know, we were like, oh my gosh, is he ever going to stop playing the same thing? And then you started getting gigs and stuff, and then I was like, okay, all
Mhm,
right,
mhm.
I got it, I got you. So your heart led you to not just practice, but to practice to really achieve, to be the best that you could be.
Yes. Yeah. And initially that wasn't my goal. My initial goal was to repeat or to mimic what I heard on the albums or what I heard
Really?
if I was learning the song. The goal for us as kids, as musicians, was not to, be famous or to be great or anything like that. It was just like, let's just learn the tune so that when we play the song, it sounds like the album. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So when I saw Joe Jackson on guitar, Philip Smetley on guitar, or Gary Brown and Michael Brown and Flint, some of those musicians play, or John Flowers or Tanis Vaughn and Jesse Robs, when I heard all these musicians play, they sound like the music on the album. So
Yes.
myself, Wesley, Scott, all the kids that I grew up with, our goal was just to sound like that, whether we were singing or whether we were playing our instruments. And I later learned that those habits of really paying attention to the details, that would serve me well. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so I know the guys, the gentlemen that you are referring to, and for
Uh-huh.
our viewers that don't know, they were in our home church, our home church body. That's where
Right.
you pretty much got your start. But what type of music, when you say you were trying to mimic the songs, was it a variety of music, or were you only interested in church music?
Well, that's a very good question. I was interested in a lot of different things, and I'll share a little bit about that. We were only allowed to listen to certain things, whether it was James Cleveland, whether it was the Winans, the Clark sisters, things of that nature. And then, of course, by singing in the church choir and then singing with the little group, the bishops, growing up as a kid, our whole goal was to sound like the Winans, to look like Commission, and to do those kinds of things. So basically, all of the music that we learned at the time, the interest was really more gospel.
Mhm.
I didn't really learn much more about other styles of music until I started listening to some of your brother's albums.
Okay, you gonna throw him under the bus.
No, 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 no. Actually, it was great because I think what it did was that opened my
Yes,
mind to
yes.
different styles of music, whether it was Isaac Hayes,
Mhm.
whether it was uh, the Ohio Players group called Dayton, Roger Troutman, Ramsey Lewis. I mean, he had all these albums, and what I would do is, as he listened to his albums, I would read the credits,
Mhm.
and by reading the credits, it just opened my mind up to see, wow, there are a lot of people that do things to make music happen. It was very fascinating to me. You know.
Wow. So as you're kind of learning and you're studying, and I know you go to college, you went to Ohio State, graduate of Ohio State, our alumni. So what do you think was actually the turning point for you to actually move from a church musician to doing some things that actually gave you a little bit more exposure? Or while you were in church, were you able to kind of connect with some of the gospel groups first, or was it a little different?
Well, first I'll say this is I went to Ohio State for a period of time, but I never graduated in the school
Oh,
of
okay,
music.
okay,
Yeah,
okay.
I actually went back a few different times. The interesting thing about going to school for music, which initially was not my goal at all. My goal was to go to school to go into political science and to become a lawyer at some point. However,
Really? I didn't
the
know that.
music, the music pulled me to different places, and to gave me different opportunities around the world, which I thought was like the education within itself from a musical standpoint. And of course, at age 40, I went back and started working on a music degree, and then I actually was pulled from that and went in and toured the world and did some other things. So there's always been an appreciation for the education aspect of it, but there's also been a very practical realization that a lot of things that you're going to learn by actually just being in the mix, you know. And for me, the church setting set the tone to be able to be very comfortable in just about every other musical venue that I actually played in. And the reason I say that,
Imagine.
what's that?
I said, I can only imagine.
I mean, and it is, but for so many different reasons, not just uh, playing or understanding or being able to hear how certain things will go musically, especially music that's not written. Sometimes you just have to be able to what we do call improvisation. You have to be able to improvise.
Mhm.
So that was something that was very much a part of growing up in church. Is back then we had testimony service, so you could hear people singing all kinds of different keys. So as an instrumentalist, you learn to play in all of the keys. In college, what they equate that to is oral training of like how to train your ear to hear something and then be able to play it right away and identify it, you
Mm.
know.
Mhm.
So there were so many things that I learned from just being in the atmosphere of church that changed my entire perspective. But there has been nothing that compares to the spirituality of what we learn and what we receive into our hearts when we allow Christ to be our Lord and Savior. And that's something that's universal, and that's something that transcends everything that you can think of musically.
I am so glad that you said that because I want any of our viewers who have young people in their life to know, even though you started a certain place, as long as the foundation is set, you can, if that is God's plan for your life, you can kind of spear off to different areas, but you got to have the foundation.
Yes,
Have
yes.
the foundation. That
Yeah,
makes
that foundation is important. I didn't realize how significant that was until I took a job with a very well-known blues artist, and he had just won his sixth Grammy Award, Dr. John out of New Orleans, and a lot of people in the church actually started to criticize me as a musician. Like, why would you take a gig, touring with that guy? I mean, do you know what his music's all about? Do you know this? Do you know that? I was like, yeah, but I'm a professional musician. I got to pay bills and take care of my family. And unless you're willing to write me a check, I'm going on tour. You know what I mean?
I understand. Mm.
But what I did learn from that, and I even explained this to my mother, and I think she really saw something different than what we had been taught before, is that if the greater one is on the inside of you, that means you have to trust the foundation of who you are and what you do and what you believe. No matter what it is, whether you're a musician, whether you're a doctor, whether you're a lawyer, whatever your profession is, your first commitment is to who you are and what it is you're called to do. Playing music, though, however, a lot of people like to separate and say, well, you know what? You can't play dance music and be a Christian. Absolutely, you sure can. You sure can. You know why? Because there will be an opportunity where your light is not necessarily your gift. Your light is your life.
Yes.
And I've been in situations where I actually saw that in manifestation. I was like, wow, this is deep, and it's bigger than what I could have ever imagined, you know.
Wow. It's just so awesome. Just so awesome. A wonderful testimony that you have. What was your first, let's just say big, your first big gig that you got when you first started out, and how did you feel when you were offered the position?
There have been so many of them. I think for
Your
me,
first. Go with your first.
yeah, I think the first really big one for me was playing with JJ and Company. John Flowers, John Binky Flowers, uh, came to my mother when I was probably about 16 years old. I knew nothing about going on the road. I knew nothing about playing in an organized situation with other musicians that I didn't know. And he came there. He said, can I take Dwight on the road with me?" And he and John Butts took me on the road with their group, JJ and Company, and we did several church tour dates, and that was absolutely phenomenal. And after that, I went out with Douglas Miller for about 6 months, just some spot dates, and those things actually uh, changed my whole perspective of like, okay, this is bigger than playing in Detroit or playing in Columbus or around the Midwest. We were playing Boston, we were playing New York, we were playing down in Florida. I had never played gigs like that before, and actually it was quite exciting. Those were my first.
Wow. So with being those guys, because I know them too, very phenomenal um artists, very phenomenal artists. When your mom was asked, were you nervous, or because you knew them, you had relationship with them, did that make it a little easier to just kind of take instruction, just follow their lead? Um, did you see a difference with them versus the person that offered you an opportunity that you didn't have a connection with?
Oh, definitely. Later on, as I got older and I was offered more secular stuff, some of that stuff I really had to take into account for myself. Of course, I'm no longer a minor, so my mother didn't have to make the decision for me. But her making the decision with John and JJ, well, John and John, was based on the relationship because of, like you said, we were all connected in the same church organization, Cool JC. So that was all right. You know what I mean?
I think that is so good. And because of their reputation, I'm sure that made it a lot easier for her to say yes.
Oh, it did because she and John Flowers made a deal. She said, "You take care of him. If he gets in trouble, I'll take care of you." So John said, "Hey man, you can't act up on the road because your mom, she'll be coming down on me." So the deal worked out. I didn't embarrass either one of them. I promise
That was, and I would never have imagined that you would, just because of your character. So she did good in trusting
you.
him and you.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so now we're gonna kind of move a little forward and into today. So you
Uh-huh.
had this phenomenal career. You've traveled all over the world, probably some places more than once. Um, just kind of throwing it out there. Do you have a favorite spot that you've been to other than where you're living? Because I know that that was a heart desire, but has there been a place that you have traveled that you really kind of would like was your favorite or
You
a
know,
favorite?
there's so many places, but if I could pinpoint one place, I would say playing in Melbourne, Australia had to be one of my favorite opportunities and experiences. That particular thing, I wasn't really familiar with Australia that much, other than Sydney and um, Perth and places like that. But there was something electrical about playing music in that area. It was very very cool. Yeah, I've only been there once, but that was very exciting. Of course, playing Europe is always exciting, especially the jazz festivals. Those are quite exciting. But I'd say Australia is probably one of my favorite places to actually perform. Yeah.
Okay. So in your journey, you have decided to um, share some of your life with us. So
Mhm.
it's time for you to kind of open the door to let people from the outside in to see who Dwight Bailey really is. And you have chosen to do that with Broken String. So would you
Right.
like to share that with us?
Well,
A, a little bit about, just A and B.
okay. So the Broken String project is really it started off as a concept for me to actually write down my ideals, not just as a composer of music, but also to document and share uh, my emotions as a musician. A lot of times when we read biographies of musicians or people that are involved in the arts, we normally find out about their success stories and how they, how much money they made or how many awards they've received or the places they played in concerts and things like that. And I've read so many of them to where I'm like, that's cool, but the average person probably won't achieve all of that in a lifetime. What can I write to share to encourage a musician or a non-musician to really just kind of excel in whatever it is that they're called to do, um, whether it's music or not. And and the best way I could do that was to express and share my written thoughts about how I felt going through processes.
Mhm.
So there are two projects that are that that are working here in tandem. A book that I've written that kind of express my emotional state as a musician, dealing with failure and the art of practicing and how painful that can be at times, but also compositions that I've written, which actually that the music will actually be out the beginning of October. So that's the music will be here before the book. But it's just an opportunity to really kind of document and to share the narrative of my life, and hopefully it encourages people to to find out what it is that they're commissioned and called to do, and so that they can actually move forward and do those things.
See, I am just so, so, so grateful that we have had the opportunity to be able to share. Just listening to you in just these few minutes that we're able to share together, um, hearing about your love for what you do. It comes through in pretty much every other word that you say. And I can only imagine that your mom, your dad, my dad, who absolutely loved you,
Yeah,
and other family members who have gone on, if they had the opportunity to see, which we know that they're looking down, but if they were here to actually witness um, this phenomenal time in your life, they would be so, so proud, so, so proud of you. And so, for them, on behalf of them, I want you to know that I am just so grateful. I am so grateful. Now, I know you have a wife and you have your children, but I am just so, so happy and so, so proud to be able to sit back and to watch you not just grow, not just blossom, not just flourish, but to really stand, not walk, but stand in who you are. You are a phenomenal father. You are a great husband. Um, you're even a pretty good cousin.
yeah. I'll pay you later for that one.
But I think it's so, so wonderful to see how God is using you in this season. And it really just does my heart glad. So I cannot wait to be able to sit in a row. I don't have to be in the front row, but in a row to be able to hear. And, we've done some things as family, but, to really be in the mix of just hearing you with your colleagues doing what you do. So just know, kudos to you. Kudos to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity to share. As you know, we are who we are, but I think the fabric of our family, from from your dad, my mom, our grandparents, and the extended family, we come from a very blessed group of people who have shown us uh, the way, you know, humility, loving one another and loving people. And that's something that, I make a statement in my book, that I learned from my mother how to love others, and I learned from my father how to love myself. And I tell you, sometimes, we don't know the lessons until we're able to reflect.
Right.
So, I say that to say this: my next album after this one is going to be called Reflections.
Wow. And I was going to
So
ask,
segue into
have
that.
another project on the horizon. So you answered that one,
Uh,
which is
yes,
amazing. And
yes,
I can't wait till we can actually get together and do this again,
yes.
because this is just the beginning, just the beginning. So thank you so very much for all that you are doing and for making us proud, making us look
Oh,
good.
oh, thank you, cuz I appreciate it.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
for your time today. Okay, viewers, so as we are wrapping up, I want you guys to stay tuned to Broken String. Dwight Bailey is our featured artist on today. Phenomenal guy, phenomenal musician. We will have a clip of his music at the end. Thank you again for tuning in. As always, I'm Terica Talbert with Century 21 Blackwell and Company. I sponsored today's episode. Until next week, enjoy.